Hello and welcome to Hot Seat, a collaboration between Sky News and First News, the UK's national newspaper for young people. Hot Seat has already seen some of the country's most powerful men and women questioned by young people about the issues that matter to them. We've seen the Chancellor of the Exchequer refuse to take on a times table test, an Education Secretary defending a parent's right to a mild smack. And today, we are very pleased that the London Mayor, Boris Johnson, has agreed to take the hot seat. Welcome.
Thank you, Anushka. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, let me tell you who you're up against. This is the Hot Seat panel. They've been drawn from First News readers and from Stand Up Be Counted, Sky News campaign to get young people engaged in politics. We have Anna Chowdhury, Robert Ebner-Stadt, Charlotte Corrigan, Beatrice Bannister, Nathan Farrington and Sophia Hindmarsh. Now, before they get started, let's get Mr Johnson to introduce himself and explain just what is it that makes you so important to their lives.
Well, it's an honour to be invited on this show. I'm Boris Johnson, I'm the Mayor of London, and I don't know, do any of you live in London? Yeah. Okay, well, in that case, I run the buses and the tubes, which you have free transport on, by the way, and I have to look after the police and fire and housing and loads of stuff like that. So I'm responsible for the economic progress of London in all sorts of ways, trying to make sure that there are jobs. How about that? Will that
Busy
do?
man. Yeah, that'll do. OK, let's get started. First up is Anya.
Would you like to become Prime Minister? And if so, what is the Boris factor?
Straight in there.
Good God. Well, I want David Cameron to be Prime Minister, and he's doing brilliantly, and I think he will be re-elected in a few weeks' time, because I think he's helped to turn the economy around in a very big way. Things are going very well for our country now. You'll see a lot of growth. Jobs are being created at a rate we haven't seen for a long, long time, and young people are getting into work in a way that we haven't seen for about 25 years. So I think Dave is going to get back in, and I think it's more likely, frankly, that one of you will take over in some dim, distant future than I will.
And the Boris factor, what is it?
Well, search me. I mean, I was lucky to get elected in 2008. I think most Londoners would say I was even more lucky to get re-elected in 2012, and then to help do the Olympics, and God only knows. I mean, I suppose it's just a question of doing your best. Turning up is a very important thing. Always turn up. My strong advice to you: turning up is about 90% of success in life.
Turning up, Anya, are you happy with that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
OK, Robert, you've got a question.
If you could take any famous landmark from another country and place it in London, which would it be and why? Well,
I've got a proposal to do exactly that. I don't know if you've ever been to Washington. They have in Washington some of the most fantastic museums in the world. Have you been to the Air and Space Museum in Washington, where you can see the rockets that went to the moon? You can see the Apollo space rockets, the machines they were in. It's called the Smithsonian, and we are going to we're going to build in London the first Smithsonian outside America. So it's going to be a branch of that museum in the Olympic Park in Stratford. And it will be a fantastic thing for that part of London. It will attract loads and loads of people from around the world, and I hope it will be a great thing for kids growing up in that part of London.
Robert, do you have a building you'd bring here?
Yeah.
Which would you bring? What about the? Would you bring the Eiffel Tower?
I'll probably bring either the Great Wall of China or the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Well, you see, but we got a bad reputation in this country for bringing things, because if you remember, we've got Cleopatra's Needle on the embankment, which we took from Karnak or Thebes or somewhere.
So we've got to stop stealing
and
things.
we took large quantities of the building called the Parthenon from Athens. We took what's called the Elgin marbles, and they want them back. So I think we're going to, and actually I don't want to give them back, but I don't want to take any more buildings from elsewhere just yet. Though I would point out, by the way, if you see what's happening now in Syria, where those deluded, demented guys are smashing those statues, it's quite a good thing that so many of them are in the British Museum rather than in Syria now. I'm just putting that out there.
Charlotte, you're next.
You fought with a Chinese dragon and you got stuck on a zip wire. Do you think you are interesting than Ed Miliband and David Cameron? And why do you think so many politicians are boring?
Well, I want you to know that being stuck on the zip wire was actually far more painful than you can, and it lasted much longer than you think. It took ages to find a rope so that they could pull me towards the thing at the end. And this was during the Olympics, and I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anybody to help me, except that I had a bodyguard, which I don't normally have. But they decided it'd be so embarrassing if I came to grief during the Olympics that they gave me Tony Blair's ex-bodyguard, who's a very nice guy called Carl. And after I'd been stuck on the zip wire in some embarrassment and personal discomfiture for about 5 minutes, I said to Carl, "Is there anything you can do?" And he went like this, and he very slowly took out his mobile phone. He took a photograph of my rear end. That was what he did. So that was the most he achieved on that particular episode, anyway.
So Carl was enjoying your discomfort, but you are missing part of the question. Are you more interesting than Ed Miliband and David Cameron?
Look, I make no comment on the leader of the opposition who must fend for himself. But David Cameron is going to go forward to, I hope very much, go forward to victory in the next few weeks, and I think he's doing a very good job. And I think he's a very, very competent and expert leader of the country, and he's somebody who I think fills the job of Prime Minister very well. And I think he should continue to do that.
So he's
in an interesting way.
In an interesting way. Great. We've also had a great response from young people. So let's take our first video question now, starting with Kira, who is Stand Up, Be Counted contributor.
I'm Kira from Liverpool. 5.3 million people live in less than the living wage, yet MPs are seeking further jobs because their 69 grand plus salary a year is not enough for them. Do you think that an MP salary is enough? And do you think that MPs now just aren't representing working class people?
£67,000, is it enough?
I certainly think that MPs should not be going around trying to take more dosh off the taxpayer. I think that public service is a privilege, and it's a great thing to be able to do. I'm hoping also to be elected to Parliament in May. I think, by the way, our questioner talked about the living wage. I think that is a fine thing, the living wage, and we've been championing it. I don't know whether you know what the living wage is or how it works. It's not compulsory. So you're not forcing firms to pay it. You're simply pointing out to them that where they can pay a little bit more to some of their lowest paid employees, that is a great thing to do. And it works for them. So you give them just for the people at the bottom, just a little bit more. And it doesn't mean that the whole firm goes bust, because they're very rich firms. And we've seen a big increase in the number of firms in London who pay it. And it's put about £60 million into the pockets of some of the hardest working people in London. So the living wage is, I think, a great thing to do.
So speaking about people higher up the income salary, MPs, do you think they should be able to take private jobs? And do you think you'll be able to be both mayor and MP at once? I think that,
yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to combine both things for about a year, exactly a year, in fact, from May. If I'm lucky enough to get in May this year, I'm going to have to do it from May to May. And the only reason I think that's okay is because, well, it's been done before. I did it before, actually. I was both an MP and mayor for a while. My predecessor was MP and mayor for ages. I think basically it's like if you're running a big government department, if you're Secretary of State for whatever it is, for defence or health or something, then you have a huge responsibility. Plus, you're also an MP. So I would do both.
But a private consultancy?
Not as a minister. I can't see how you can do that. No.
OK, let's go back to the panel, and Beatrice has a question.
If you could change one thing about the world now, instantly, without having to pass it under any law, what would it be?
I would change the thing where all these kids, these young people in London and in other places are getting sucked into this jihadi nonsense. I don't know whether you've seen what's happened with these young girls going from London schools, young men learning all this absolute rubbish. It's nothing to do with Islam properly understood. We need to knock it on the head. How about we just change their mindset so that they see this as a catastrophic mistake and a false turning.
OK, I think, Nathan, this is something you wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah, again, terrorism is rising with people leaving the UK to join the ISIS. So what will you do to stop this, and should we feel safe in the UK?
We should feel safe in the UK, and this is a very, very safe society. The police do a wonderful job of keeping us safe. I mean, crime is down, murder rates are down. This is an increasingly safe city. But you're so right, Nathan, we do have a problem with terrorism and with young people who are just being driven, I think, in my view, off the edge by an ideology that is very seductive, but that's leading them into terrible, disastrous mistakes and criminal behaviour. So you need to see what they're doing, and I'm afraid you need to be able to monitor them. And I think when they're communicating with each other over the internet, we should be able to, our police and security services should be able to see what they're doing. And
including on social media?
Yeah, including on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I'm not a great expert on social media, but they should definitely have that power. And when they come back to Britain, they should be arrested. There's no question.
OK, great. Sophia?
You are a very popular mayor of London. You've introduced the Oyster cards, the Boris bikes that are very useful. You've banned alcohol on transport, and you've represented London all around the world. You also have a really cool hairdo. So, why be an MP?
Right. Well, I have done an awful lot of those things.
He's blushing.
I am blushing. The Oyster card, I've got to admit to you, the Oyster card, although it's brilliant, we've massively expanded. In fact, we've got bank card. You can pay with your bank if you have a bank card. I don't know if you've got bank cards.
Probably not.
Probably not yet. Quite right. Don't bother. You can pay. By the way, but you in a few years' time, you'll be able to pay with your mobile phone. You will just wave your mobile phone if you have a mobile phone. Do you have mobile phones? No, what? Yes, what? No. If you'll be able to wear your mobile phone and in the future, you'll probably have your little rice-sized or smaller microchips embedded in your, I don't know, wrist. You just blink. You'll just wave, and you'll invisibly pay that way. So the technology is changing the whole time. What was your question?
Why do you want to be an MP?
Why would I be an MP? Because I think, to be given the responsibility of serving a constituency, to be trying to do your best for people in Uxbridge and South Ruislip is where I'm trying for, is a fantastic privilege. I think there's a lot of rubbish talked at the moment about how everybody thinks MPs are twerps and so on. I don't agree. I think most people actually understand that MPs are vital, that they do, on the whole, a good job. Most of them are incredibly hardworking, and yes, some of them do let the side down, and we've seen some recent stuff about people seeming to want too much money and all the rest of it, but most of them really aren't like that. And I think the House of Commons, British democracy, is absolutely wonderful and something that is respected still and admired around the world. So I'm keen to get back in there.
There you go, you heard it here first. MPs are not twerps. Now,
no,
let's hear
not all twerps.
From more
there may be some
selfie.
They're not all twerps. No.
They're not all twerps. They're not all twerps, sorry. Right, more selfie questions from our stand-up, Be Counted contributors.
Hello, my name is Angel, and my question for Boris Johnson is, what is he going to do to make sure that youngsters outside the capital can see the opportunities that are available inside the capital to young people? So things like apprenticeships, internships, work experience that perhaps we wouldn't get in smaller cities outside of the capital.
Hello Boris, my name's Basil and I come from Greenford High School. My question is, how would you prove to your Conservative Party followers that the policies that you've been implementing as the Mayor of London are truly Conservative values and ideologies?
I'm Dom, I'm 16 from Milton Keynes. I would like to know, what is your current opinion on immigration and its potential policy changes?
Okay.
Right, okay.
I can remind you.
Yeah. No,
kids outside London.
The first question was about apprenticeships and how can kids outside London understand the opportunities. Get on our website. If you think that if you're living outside London, who's from London, who's outside London? Sorry, yeah. Where
Chester.
I'm from London.
You're from London. Okay, just a couple of London, and everybody. You could just get on our websites, look at the apprenticeship schemes. That's where to go. Are our policies conservative? In the sense that they have been about trying to deliver better value services for less money for everybody. Yes, they are. And we've cut the council tax in London year after year, and we're going to keep cutting it. And the previous guys, who weren't Conservatives, by the way, the left-wing chap who was in before me, he whacked council tax up by 153%. So, and we're going to cut it in real terms by 20%. So that's where he's gone. But that's a Conservative approach. And on immigration, I think there's two sides to it. I think that I don't want to be hostile to immigrants. I think London has a population, 40%, or almost 40%, were born abroad. And they are hugely contributing to the dynamism of the economy. What I don't want to see is people coming in illegally. And I don't want to see people bludging and skiving and idling and loafing and leeching and, think of another word like that, off the state.
Do you worry that too many immigrants do that?
And so I think we need to watch out for that. I think what David Cameron is proposing on that, in that area is very sensible. So make sure the controls are tight. You know, Britain's a wonderful place to be. It's a privilege. It's a huge privilege to be able to live here. Control the people coming in. Don't let them milk the system, but don't be hostile to somebody just because they've made the decision to uproot themselves and come and build a life in another country, because they will be people very often of a great deal of energy and talent. And my own ancestors came from abroad. I had a Turkish great-grandfather who came to this country in the early part of the 20th century, and if London hadn't taken him in, well, I certainly wouldn't be here. He then went back to Turkey, of course, and got killed. But that was because he wasn't a very successful politician, I'm afraid to say.
Okay, thank you. Back to our panel, and Anya.
What are your biggest regrets in your political and personal life?
Jesus, regrets.
Personal and political.
I think just this. I think I regret bitterly. I still regret my failure to get anywhere as a rock star and a player of the guitar. I tried at school to master the guitar with a view to becoming a famous,
At Eton.
Exactly, and it was hopeless. And then I thought, right, well, I'll master the piano, and that went even worse. So that's my real. So I would, if you do have the slightest musical ability, if anybody has the slightest, then keep going. I would encourage people with any talent, whatever, not to waste it, because I frankly had none, and it's painful to see people who do have talent waste it.
So that's personal, political.
Just. Let me think. I'll tell you an obvious one. I think that in 2003, I was naive and unrealistic about my expectations of the level of planning that we had done for the aftermath of the Gulf War, of the removal of Saddam Hussein. I thought that the Pentagon must have worked out a way forward. I thought that actually, if we were going to kick this tyrant out, we had worked out a way in which a new government would come in, a new society would be organised, and how power would be transferred. The tragedy was there was no transfer of power to anybody. It was more or less anarchic, and it was one of the reasons we've now got the shambles in Iraq and Syria that you see today. So I certainly regret that.
Okay, thank you. Robert.
Do you have a crush on any celebrities? If so, who?
I think that's a really difficult. I mean, you're bowling these right on middle stump here. I have to be very careful what I say here. I've got to be very. I have. Let me think. I have previously admitted to it's too embarrassing. It's too embarrassing.
Oh, come on.
No, Anushka, I can't. I'm taking the Fifth Amendment on this.
If you did want
Basil Brush, how about that? Basil Brush.
If you did want to go on a date with Basil Brush, I think you might want to brush your hair. So here's a comb.
Oh, thank you very much.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not going to comb it now, but thank you very much.
But before you see Basil. All right, Charlotte, you're next.
Do you agree with Ed Miliband that tuition fees should be cut?
No, I don't. I don't agree with that policy. I think that what Labour are proposing would be absolutely disastrous for university finance. We've got some of the best universities in the world here in London, and 4 of the top 10 universities, they depend on being properly financed. The best people to contribute to the financing of those universities are the students who benefit from them. Over their lifetimes, graduates from universities will earn massively more than people who don't go to university. So I'd rather see them subsidise the universities than general taxpayers who don't benefit from that education. So I'm not a taker for that policy at all.
Okay, fantastic. But you did, of course, benefit from free education yourself.
I did, but you know that was at a time, Anushka, when a much smaller proportion of the population went to university. We've hugely expanded higher education provision in this country, rightly, because it's a great thing, but it needs to be paid for. Who's going to pay for it? Should it be everybody, including people on lots of people on very low incomes, or should it be the university graduates who are in a much stronger financial position as a result of their education?
There you go, a left-wing defence of tuition fees. Beatrice?
What sort of dad are you? Do you embarrass your children?
Yeah, look, you've got to ask them, and I think that, I think I would be embarrassing them even more if I were to attempt to answer that question.
Well, you can answer the first part. What sort of dad are you?
Embarrassing, probably.
An embarrassing dad.
I do remember, yeah, I'm embarrassing.
Nathan?
Obesity in the UK has become a big problem, with 67% of men and 57% of women being overweight or obese. How will you reduce this amount, particularly in children?
Well, we are trying to do all sorts of things in London to help with that problem. It is pretty bad, but it's getting a little bit better. Would you believe it? London kids are getting a little bit lighter, and that is good news. We're trying to help with all sorts of exercise programs through supporting walking, cycling, sport. We have a huge grassroots sport operation trying to get kids involved in sport. We're trying to encourage healthy eating in schools. We've got stuff in the London plan. We've got stuff to discourage councils from giving permission to chicken fast food joints and greasy, food shops being set up right next to schools. Now, let me ask you: do you prefer, if you had the choice at lunch between pizza and chips, and
Trying to think of something healthy.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Shall we help you?
Yeah, go on.
Vegetables.
Pizza and chips, and a lovely ratatouille with a lovely vegetable ratatouille with salad. Which would you rather have?
Probably the pizza.
Yeah, you see, that's the problem.
So you think restrict choices, but isn't that a bit nanny state?
I don't know. I think you've got to encourage kids to eat healthily somehow or other.
Do you eat healthily? Would you have chosen the pizza or the ratatouille?
I would have probably had both. That's the tragic answer.
Great. Sophia, you're next.
You are very good at Latin, so what does princeps esse velim mean?
Well, I know what you're trying to get me to say. Volo David Cameronem esse principem.
Oh, beautiful. What does that mean?
I want David Cameron to be Prime Minister. There you go.
Not forever.
No, but for as long as it takes.
Okay, you can tell us. What does it really mean?
I think I want to be leader.
Yeah.
Clever little question there.
Very good question, yeah.
Right, quickly, last two, Nathan then Sophia.
What makes you angry?
I noticed that you went to the east coast of America. Were you given any gifts or souvenirs? What is the most unusual gift that you have ever been given?
God, the most unusual gift. Let me think.
You must have had a few.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm just trying to think. I think when I was in the Gulf, they laid on a banquet for us, and I was asked we had to eat camel, which I thought was pretty. Have you ever eaten a camel? The answer is to start one bite at a time, basically, and it was.
What does it taste like?
It tastes rather good. It tastes rather like a mutton. It tastes like a big sheep.
Yeah. A big sheep as opposed to a small sheep.
Yeah.
And what makes you angry?
I think very, very little is the truth, except possibly being beaten at tennis or any other game by one of my brothers and sisters. But I don't get really angry. I don't want to encourage anybody to get angry. You know, we're just about losing a game.
So you're not an angry man?
No. No. I mean, if people, one thing I do object to. I don't have a. But when lorry drivers come up behind me and I'm just cycling innocently in the middle of I'm keeping to my side of the road, and they decide that because they're so big and their lorry is so powerful and they want to just clear me out of the road and they hoot aggressively, then I do see red a bit. I do, and I sometimes when the traffic lights, if I draw next to them, I will give them a piece of my mind.
Do you?
I do.
Well, there you have it.
Such as it is. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I'd love to see that. Thank you very much. That is it for this edition of Hot Seat. I would like to thank our panel and to all those who sent in their questions. And thanks, of course, to the London Mayor, Boris Johnson. Perhaps next time he's in the hot seat, he'll be an MP or maybe an even higher office.
No,
Let's see.
Thank you.